Well, everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review They Cloned Tyrone, and this is a new film from writer-director Joel Taylor, and it is an action, comedy, mystery, sci-fi thriller on Netflix, and this focuses on a series of eerie events, thrusting an unlikely trio onto the trail of a nefarious government conspiracy in this pulpy mystery caper. And this is such an interesting film because you could definitely tell there's a lot of interesting ideas here and how it channels the history of the government manipulating the black community in America, and you even see it in modern day and why there was such a big hesitancy with like vaccines in the black community because it's coming from the government and they've done some messed up stuff in the past in terms of medical usage in terms of the black community. And I feel like that kind of idea and theme is like really the undercurrent of this because something really messed up is happening in this small community. This film has a very specific look to it. I was wondering like if this is like a legit period piece because of the look of it, how some of the costumes are, and even how like the graininess of how this film is shot in terms of cinematography from Ken Singh, who does the cinematography. It has a very distinct look to it, and it gives it a rawness, and I think that rawness is important as this is tackling some pretty impactful and emotional elements. But also on top of that, we have this trio of characters played by three very talented actors. John Boyega as Fontaine, who is the one who something happens to him earlier in the film and then he miraculously is okay the next day. And people start questioning and really freaked out. And you find this conspiracy of, as the title might allude to, some cloning going on. But it's really the mystery of like why and who and what's going on here that continues to propel you throughout the story. And you have Jamie Foxx as Slick Charles, and Jamie Foxx is really leaning into this with some big personality and characterization. But Tiana Paris plays Yo-Yo, who's from WandaVision, is going to be in the Marvels as Monica Rambeau, but also from like Dear White People. She is so great in this as well. They make such an interesting and charismatic trio of characters that we can enjoy watching, even if, which it does, I feel like this film for 2 hours has a lot of interesting scenes and interesting ideas. But it doesn't always come together to really be a cohesive and engrossing and just overall compelling story because I feel like it's so messy in the way that it all comes together. And there's some awkward, uneven pacing in terms of how the narrative is displayed to us. Because like it feels like there's this big thing, and the big thing seems like it's going to be driving us towards the climax, but there's still a decent chunk of the film left, and then it lets the air out, and then we have to build back up to that point again. And you generally see stuff like that, you know, the second act, oh, it looks like we're going to accomplish our thing, and then we get knocked down, and we get back up again. There you go. It feels more dramatic here, and it kind of kills a lot of the pacing, and then I felt like I had the feeling of trying to reconnect with the story and getting back into it, as it was really slowed the pace down to a point where it was figuring out what this film really is again. And it does lead to a big climax that feels a little bit too obvious at that point, where it's like, oh, we're going to have a big shootout, and it felt like a lot less interesting of a way to kind of resolve this story. And there's definitely some really interesting scenes. Like there's a church scene, David Alan Grier is in it as a pastor, and it feels like right out of the Blues Brothers in some ways, and it's so interesting, and like how does it fit in the greater context of the story? I don't know. But it's interesting, and I feel like that's the thing. there is a story here, and there's a lot of offshoots that some of those offshoots are really interesting, isolated. But how do they all come together? It doesn't always. And you have like Kiefer Sutherland, who is like the main white character in this story, and of course he's going to be who you probably think he's going to be in terms of this whole conspiracy. And, you know, he's doing his gruff voice that Kiefer Sutherland has now, and in the end, I feel like this movie had a lot more interesting ideas and a lot more interesting elements that doesn't always add up to something great. But the actors are committed, it has an interesting feel, it has interesting elements, and it's still worth a watch. It's right there on Netflix, and so I think that's at least something like you can take that in, enjoy it, and, you know, have a good time, even if it's not something that is going to be 100% satisfying to you by the end of the film. But those are my thoughts on They Cloned Tyrone. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.